In this series, I show developer videos that inspired me and what I think is so great about them. In this episode, I show a talk from John Romero called The Early Days of id Software. John Romero was the co-founder of id Software that changed the gaming industry forever with games like Commander Keen, Doom and Quake. The video you will see won't teach you how to create the next generation 3D game. Instead, Romero shares some id Software core principles that are relevant today for small teams. The talk starts with Romero talking about his first encounter with computers. If you like the history of games and home computers from the 70s and 80s, this part is nice to watch. Once he starts to talk about id Software, he shows the principles they used to create their games. The first principle is no prototypes. But I'll let him explain it.
But we made 2 games simultaneously. And this was due to us having 10 years of intense game development experience prior, but it was also due to our first principle. Back then we had no prototypes. Just make the game, polish as you go. You don't depend on polish happening later. Always maintain constantly shippable code. This is how we made so many games so quickly. We had the entire game in our heads. We knew what it was. We just needed to quantify what needed to be done and then went about working on it until the game was finished. So there were no prototypes for our early games. We just made them. So remember, we were a small team of 4 people and we could do this back then. Large teams definitely require more planning.
No prototypes and polish as you go. That is the agile spirit. At least how Agile started before it became what it is today. And as he points out, this works great for small teams. I have experienced this myself while working for the Microsoft HoloLens studios. Most of my colleagues previously worked in the game industry. There is only one law. The bottom line is shipping. Stop creating proof of concepts, just make the app and keep improving it until the shipping date has arrived. Improve later. When projects need to be finished under time pressure, his next tip is really important.
But we couldn't afford to have anything go wrong while we were making our games at such a pace that we created another principle that kept us developing quickly. So it's incredibly important that your game can always be run by your team. Bulletproof your engine by providing defaults on load failure. So if you have 100 people trying to develop a game that will not run, you're paying for 100 people to sit around and wait for it to get fixed. Providing a standard default for a failure case will keep the game running quickly and show you what's missing. So if you fail to load a sprite, you're trying to load a sprite and it fails, just show a bagel.
Now, this translates perfectly to even the largest projects I have ever worked in. Always make sure to have hard-coded test data. If there is no data in your app due to an empty database or connection problem, with the flip of a switch, your app should be able to load baked-in test data. An additional benefit of this is that all data providers must be hidden behind an interface, which improves modular design. The third principle applies to tooling around the project.
So we had a new principle. Great tools help make great games. So spend as much time on tools as possible. I wrote a tile editor in 1991 named TED for Tile Editor. TED was used for 33 shipped retail games.
I so agree with this. Once you notice recurring tasks, find or build a tool that does it for you. Examples are scripts to resize images, create translations, and if you have watched my video tutorials before, you might have noticed that I never make typos in my code. Now, that is not because I'm a good typist, because I'm not, but because I created a tool that does the typing for me. Sometimes these tools even lead to your next great idea. If you like games, you probably have heard of SimCity. Did you know that that game was born out of a tile editor written for this game? The talk continues with another very important principle, and that is about the quality of your code.
We came up with another important principle. We are our own best testing team, and we should never allow anyone else to experience bugs or see the game crash. I know it seems impossible, but don't waste other people's time. Test thoroughly before checking in your code, no throwing it over the fence for testers to find it and put in a bug report, and then you get to fix it later. It's a wasteful cycle.
Now, I'm pretty sure he is not talking about TDD or unit tests. These guys played their own games so often, they knew it had no obvious bugs before sending it to beta testers. And when it did, they applied their next principle.
As soon as you see a bug, you fix it. You do not continue on. If you don't fix your bugs, your new code will be built on a buggy code base and then ensure an unstable foundation. If you check in buggy code, someone will be writing code based on your bad code, and you can just imagine the cascading effect there.
This is actually very contrary to what you see in offices with backlogs of errors that no one wants to solve. Now forget about bug fix Fridays and tell your boss you are not going to build any new features until you fixed all bugs. This prevents building new code on old bad code. And this leads to the next principle.
Again, we started with a clean code base. We had no code from Doom used in Quake, which was basically another of our principles of development was write your code for this game only, not for some future game. You're going to be writing new code later because you'll be smarter. Also, you're not tying yourself down to the limitations of your past code. So invent new things.
Write your code for this game, not a future game. I was so guilty of this. I used to create libraries and frameworks for a project and generalizing it for future stuff. Well, since 99% of all the code I have ever written in my life is deleted, that wasn't the best way to spend my time. It was fun though. Now, at the end of the talk, there is one principle that is great for small teams, but might not fit large teams.
Programming is a creative art form that's based in logic. Every programmer is different and will code differently. Don't waste time focusing on a rigid coding style. It's the output that matters.
I think coding styles are great because they help people reading the code faster. But there is a downside. You probably have worked in teams where coding styles are so rigid, important functionality is blocked because you wrote a line over 80 characters or used a non-conform variable name. So it is important to find a good mix between general style guides and personal preferences. If you want to watch John Romero's video, a link is in the description. Now, there are many more developer videos I took inspiration from, and if you like this style of video, let me know in the comments, and we'll see each other in the next one.